So I'm here with Helms Jarrell. Hello, Helms. Helms is a member of the Wisdom Council as well, Kinship Plot. So Helms, there's a lot I could say to introduce you, but would you just take a few moments, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you care about, and what you do, how you spend your time.
Sure. So I'm Helms and I have she, her pronouns, and I live on Catawba and Sugaree land, known as, or commonly known as Charlotte, North Carolina. And I live in the west side of Charlotte. My kind of people are creative and intentional and hardworking and playful. And the place where I live and work and do life intersects at spaces of cultural practice and art making, music making, faith practice, and justice. So I am the founder and co-director of QC Family Tree, which is a neighborhood-based organization that practices cultural organizing to cultivate community for the common good. And I'm also the organizing pastor of Beloved Community Charlotte, which is a church start that is taking seriously what we believe, so much so that we activate that within our bodies and our life choices. And so we're kind of a faith activist group. And I'm an artist. And my primary art practice is through visual arts and storytelling. But all that kind of weaves together in unusual and strange ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're talking about this concept, idea, practice, posture toward kinship, which we're defining as radical mutuality or mutuality of being, or solidarity, belonging to each other. And you have quite a bit of experience with this, or have thought a lot about this, or have practiced it. So I wonder, how is this important to you in your work, this idea of kinship and practice of?
Yes, well, I think like the first time that I was like lured into the word kin or kindred was probably like Anne of Green Gables. She had a bosom buddy that that she loved, and she would talk about them being kindred. And then I also have this favorite children's book. It's a chapter book that still really is just my favorite book of all time. The Education of Little Tree. And there's this moment where Little Tree, who's a boy, is talking about how his grandparents love one another, but instead of saying "I love you," they say "I ken ye," which I think might be something that like is a Scottish thing.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm. But I really took to that and really liked. So there was a time period when I would try to figure out how it is to say "I love you" without being weird to friends or to other people that you have relationships with that aren't your partner in life. And so sometimes I would kind of utilize that language. So anyway, the notion of being like fully related to someone in a way that they know you so well and you know them well and you still like them and want to be related to them, I think is important to me. The space that I feel like where you have to kind of figure out how to do that in the midst of structures and hierarchy and privilege and all that kind of stuff, like to fully know someone and to allow them to be fully known, you have to think about, figuratively speaking, what ground that they're standing on and what ground you're standing on and what barriers might be in the way for you to be fully known or for them to fully know you. And so when you can kind of look at that and look at the root of that and try to get around it so that you can really actually know each other deeply, you have to address material issues, you have to address economic issues, you have to address matters of like leadership and power and those kinds of things, or else the dynamic is off. And if you're in a place of power, which I am, and as a kind of a privileged white person with education and middle class background, if I don't acknowledge those things, or if I don't try to like figure out ways to level that playing field or that ground, then I can really easily think this is what I get into. I can like really easily think that I know somebody very well and that I love them and that they love me, and then I'm deceived because the dynamic is off. And the thing that I think is like a sentimentalization of care and concern is really off balance. And so I have to think about that a lot in terms of like, what ground am I standing on? What is this relationship really like? We used to think about this a lot when we would have interns at QC Family Tree. Like if I have, or if they have keys to a building and they get a paycheck, then they cannot think of random person who they're ministering with on the same level. They're not. They have power and access that other person does not have. So like that's a really easy example of a place where you have to really think about hierarchy and what that means so far as like actual mutuality. Like it's not mutual if someone has keys and a paycheck and a title and they put it on the resume. That's not the same thing as whoever it is that volunteered for this thing that is just here because they want to be here. Not the same at all.
Yeah.
So, like in another like little example space is that there's QC Family Tree owns property. And we try to figure out many ways that we can share that property with folks. And there's some of it is rental property and some of it is community hub space. And so we're always trying to figure out how to share and be in solidarity with the folks that are around us and make sure that everything is as accessible as possible. Well, there's this one space that is kind of like a free-for-all space. And I've been using it for the church gatherings that I'm trying to organize for this church startup. And I put the information out there forever ago on Instagram. It's in the public. Everybody knows about it. Well, a resident at QC Family Tree texted me and said, I'd like to use this space for my birthday. Well, the birthday is on the same day as the church gathering. And so I'm like, I gotta, like, I don't want to move. I put this here first. This is my calendar date. I already sent this to you as kind of one stance that I have. Mm-hmm. But then another space is, this is her birthday. Birthdays are really important in this community. This is when their family can gather. And this is the green space that they have. So like, and I know that. And so how do I think about that? Am I now like the landlord who said, well, I put this on a calendar, the words are written in ink somewhere, and I told y'all about this ahead of time, and therefore I have authority to be on this space? And because I don't have the title to the grass, but the organization that I founded and directed does. Like, do I utilize, like, is this a moment for that? Or is this a moment for me to like, well, I can tell my people that are going to come to this church to move somewhere else. And if anybody comes as a guest that day and we weren't expecting them, we'll have lots of signs and greeters and have them show their way, And so I even had to talk that out with the neighbor and be like, I don't know which one I'm supposed to be right now. And I don't want to be like the white lady who's like has dominion over this space. And so anyway, we worked it out. And of course, the church gathering is moving and we're going to have signs and there's going to be greeters and we're going to go somewhere else. And she's going to have her birthday party over there. And
that's so helpful. Because I think sometimes like what you said about sentimentalizing, like we can use these words and they can sound nice and make us feel good. But, the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is, and you've brought the discussion, this direction is like, there is actually no kinship without blank. Like we can say mutuality, we can say these things, but without equality or equity or, even considering those things, like we can't just in one fell swoop get rid of those, those systems of hierarchy that exist so that we can feel good about. So, you've already named a lot of these. The next question was, what are the most common barriers to kinship that you encounter? Which you've named a number of them. Is there anything that comes to mind, even if you think beyond your particular situation, out now a little bit broader into what might be common for all of us or for the community of Charlotte, for example? Like what is standing in the way of actualizing that?
I think like the great big systems that segregate us from one another and that put individualism the value of individualism above all other things is kind of the biggest barrier that is like external. And then the inside one is from like the internal barrier for me sometimes is that in this mixed up world where we're kept from each other in very structural ways, and also the values that we uphold keep us from one another. Sometimes it's hard for me because I've been like washed and bathed and birthed in that land. It's hard for me to know sometimes because the idea of like an actual mutuality and relationship with one another is not natural to the way in which our society has been structured. And so sometimes I don't know what if that is real. Like, I don't know what if kinship is real. I don't know how to measure it. I don't know if it's there or not. And sometimes I'll second guess and sort of go back to old thought processes or things that I've been taught that will tell me that it's not real, or, you know, I'll have some insecurity, or I'll have some like, no, this person, you know, competition will be so important, or all these other things that I'll be like, you know, it's not really possible, or it's not there, or it's not something that I'm going to experience. So I think the big structures have informed us so much so that we just sort of are used to being segregated. We're used to being hyper individualized. We're used to utilizing our power, not thinking about it. We're used to a lot of those things. And so then even if kinship was like actually experienced, we might not know it.
Yeah. What is a practice that you imagine could move us closer to actualizing that? Something simple, something in the everyday, to actualizing that kind of radical mutuality.
Well, I mean, simple one that is easy to do here is that if I'm outside on the porch, porch sitting, in other words, is a really easy practice because people pass by, but also I can move my own feet if people aren't passing by, and pass them and acknowledge their presence and kind of take those moments to recognize. Sometimes I need to be remember that I'm not isolated, and that I need to see a human being, especially in the Zoom COVID world. And so that's one very, very simple practice. Another one that is easy for me is to just invite folks to a meal or a walk. I usually need to be doing something. So a walk or a meal to have a conversation and to stay engaged and connected with folks.